All right. Well, good morning or good evening, everyone. This is Conversations with Jack, hosted by Citizen Cosmos and OmniFlix Media. Thank you to both of the teams there for helping me produce this content. Today, I've got Kevin Davis, who's the CTO at Kava Labs, a very exciting startup in the Cosmos space, to talk about Kava. Kevin, do you want to give yourself a little introduction here?
Sure. Thanks, Jack. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
Kevin. I am the head of engineering at Kava Labs. Been working on Cosmos and DeFi for probably about 2.5, 3 years now. Sort of the intersection of that space. We're big believers in the idea that sort of interoperability is inevitable in the blockchain space, that capital is going to become super liquid. So we were very, very interested to start working on Cosmos, which we think is the best project for addressing the idea of interoperability. And then we've been building out all these DeFi primitives on the Kava blockchain in the last couple of years. The first one was a CDP type functionality where users can leverage their cryptocurrency holdings. We do that in a cross-chain manner, create a stablecoin, some sort of a debt asset. Second thing that we're releasing is a money market, automated money market type functionality, similar to what people have seen in Compound and Aave take off in Ethereum, and sort of working on that while in parallel working on different forms of cross-chain bridges, from sort of centralized sort of exchange wrappers that are permissionless, all the way to IBC, which is trying to sort of put the center of interoperability closer to the users and the blockchains themselves.
One of the things that kind of stuck out to me about what you just said is like how long you've been working on the Cosmos SDK. And that reminded me, like, I feel like the first version of the SDK you guys were working on was like 0.32, which was an absolute tire fire of a piece of software.
I won't complain, or I won't object to that statement. That's roughly true.
Yeah, but you guys implemented an early version of Kava on that, upgraded a couple times, and were able to bring it to mainnet, which is really, really cool. So thanks for that little introduction on how you first heard about Cosmos. So one of the more exciting things in the Cosmos that's coming up is IBC. You guys have been doing cross-chain work for a while. What's something exciting about IBC for you guys?
For us, it's all about the scope of the number of people who are interested in IBC. When you talk about cross-chain stuff, it's very easy to talk a big game and then have zero users or zero interest. Like in some ways, interoperability is a two-way street. There has to be both the technological capacity as well as the community interest. IBC is that, like, times 10. That is where the community sort of zeroed in on. And at the time of the white paper, people were excited about it and getting to the point where we're going to release it.
One of the things that you just said is, something that's been strong on my mind recently, which is, it's easy to build a bridge to nowhere. But if you have applications on both sides that draw users, which is something that, Kava's been working under this assumption for a long time, you can actually bring users over and you can actually get utility out of these things. So yeah, very cool. So besides Kava, what's your other favorite project in the Cosmos ecosystem?
Got to be Akash. I love working with those guys. I think they have a really cool vision. I think sort of the decentralized cloud is a real cool piece of blockchain infrastructure, and I think that will evolve into something very interesting on a 5 to 10 year time frame. I think that it's a really ambitious project, and I love the team, and so I've really enjoyed watching them sort of go from idea to mainnet to building out and hopefully becoming successful in that space.
Yeah, one of the things that we had Greg on last week, and one of the things that didn't get covered on that show is who backs a lot of the compute on Akash right now. And while the overall vision is to get to this decentralized compute marketplace, and it's architected that way, they have the world's largest data center provider providing points of presence in tons of countries for users on this. So backed by some really serious infrastructure spend there, which is cool. Yeah, you guys have been great working with Akash for a long time. So for Kava, one of the huge proof points I saw for you guys recently, you just released a new roadmap for 2021.
2021, new year, if you can believe it.
New year, new Kava. So do you want to talk a little bit about those big roadmap items and what you guys have planned for this year?
Yeah, sure. So sort of as part of our, getting better at running Kava, releasing a roadmap in January of the new year was a big step for us. And sort of it's focused on still building out the core vision. So we think that there are probably more than a handful, but less than hundreds pieces of decentralized infrastructure for DeFi that will become like staples or sort of like primitives that sort of need to exist. And we're sort of still in the space of figuring out, well, what are the primitives?
Yeah, kind of in the same way you need like home loans and securitized loans and, all the standard financial products that people work with every day are going to end up becoming on-chain financial products. And I think that if you think hard about your average day, you can think of at least 10 to 15 financial products that you're interacting with on an average day.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're basically committing to building out certain portions of that infrastructure this year, with the first being this release of the hard automated money market, which allows for supply and borrow of these cross-chain assets and an automated endogenous interest rate to sort of balance supply and demand in the money market account. We think that there's pretty strong demand for that amongst people who want to supply assets and earn passive interest, and then amongst people who want to borrow assets either to go short or for yield farming opportunities, things like that. We think in general, a money market is a great primitive that sort of will continue on. And then the second one that we're really excited to start looking at and have done some specification work on already is an automated money market maker type protocol. Anything in the Uniswap curve territory, we think like the explosion of use on that in Ethereum is really, really fascinating. If you told me 2 years ago that sort of like the ICO would be replaced by this liquidity event on chain that's pretty decentralized, pretty uncensorable, I would not have believed you. I would have said that sort of, the exchange pooling liquidity is just such a strong pull that for these long tail assets, we're just going to always see the demand be on the exchange. And that's not really true right now. New projects do not often spend their time thinking about how to get on exchanges in the Ethereum world. And so an automated market maker serves that what we call the long tail distribution of these assets that are new, that are very speculative, that have rug pulls and other sorts of very interesting behaviors.
What we saw with Wi-Fi last year and, them initially listing on Uniswap and then very quickly getting picked up by Binance and Coinbase once they got traction was sort of the beginning of that. And that was kind of DeFi summer last year. So an AMM to help serve that long tail of new asset issuance.
Yep. And then it also is a form of on-chain exchange that we think is actually useful for the top level assets as well. That like on-chain exchange will become more common as blockchain scale, as liquidity moves onto chains. An automated market maker is a good place to have there for sort of the front tail where you have high liquidity, as well as just a large number of holders and a large number of people who are interested in making a market between ETH and USD, between BTC and USD. And that's why those pools are so large on Uniswap. So we think that that's very interesting. And then we're focused sort of on core improvements to Kava. We'd really like to get a staking derivative. We think that sort of in general, the industry is going to move towards more liquid forms of staking. So we'd like to be part of the effort that's been sort of ongoing for almost 2 years now.
Collateral.
Yeah, more capital efficient collateral.
Yeah, that's the way I always think about that. And like staking derivatives is, this term that gets thrown around a lot. There's a lot of different designs out there, but essentially what's going on right now is you can only use your collateral for one thing, and it's pretty much got to be fully collateralized or over collateralized in the case of, let's say Kava.
Loans. Yeah, loans generally are over collateralized on chain.
And the traditional financial system doesn't work this way for a wide variety of reasons, and you can get much greater capital efficiency for a lot of use cases there. So how do we bring this greater capital efficiency to DeFi? Staking derivatives is one powerful tool to help us do that. And, the Cosmos ecosystem as a whole kind of has this in their sights this year. what you're hearing from Kevin is a lot of overlap with things that other folks in the ecosystem are talking about right now. And yeah. Cool. Any other items on that roadmap that you guys are excited about?
Yeah, and then the one that we're most excited about is IBC and bridge technology generally. We're really excited to sort of start actually in a decentralized manner, going chain to chain, bringing in new forms of collateral that way, as well as potentially moving Kava assets off to another platform that way, and sort of seeing the emergence of these, what we think will be super liquid forms of collateral moving around first in the Cosmos ecosystem and then generally the blockchain ecosystem.
So you guys have quite a bit of experience with cross-chain assets, and I think you've experienced firsthand some of the challenges based on your chat rooms. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys have learned implementing BEP3 and supporting that use case for a while? Because BEP3 has relayers, it has on-chain primitives, and it also has UI, and there's complexities around how to display all of that for end users. That's often confusing. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges you guys have had deploying cross-chain technologies and how that's going to help you moving forward in this IBC world.
Yeah, so I would say in 2019, we went live with our first version of BEP3 that just supported one asset, which was BNB, going from Binance Chain to Kava. And then BEP3 relies on this singular relayer process, which is a trusted relayer process to move to basically to ferry messages from one side to the other and then to act on the other side on the origin chain. And we experienced in sort of the initial rollout, the idea that like this is somewhat of a much easier concept for engineers to understand than users. And so trying to get a user flow where users understand that like, what's happening the whole time. So users do not want to send their money to something and not see it appear on the other side. So giving enough context in the UI has been a big challenge. And then as well, the notion of BEP3 is that there's basically this process that holds all the money. Well, caring a lot about the security of that process, working to have sort of protocols with the operator. So we don't operate BEP3, Binance operates BEP3. It's a protocol that they wrote. Working with the operator to A, make sure that's secure, but B, also to have, they want to do things that traditional exchanges do, like have hot wallets and cold wallets, and making sure that if the hot wallet is low on money, that it's getting topped up on time, as well as trying to help users understand that sort of like, no, you can't withdraw your funds right now, but I promise it'll be back in 4 hours or whatever, trying to get the downtime down. And also realizing that that's sort of like what IBC will also face that challenge, is like relayers can become, large holders of asset pools, or essentially the decentralized relayer. The chain itself becomes, the holder of these large asset pools. Securing them is non-trivial. Making the trade-off between I want to keep this in a cold vault that no one can access versus it's super liquid, it's always available, but oh God, if someone steals it, that's bad. Sort of balancing those two things. And then also sort of figuring out where you can compromise. So what we really like about BEP3 is it's permissionless. You do not have to ask permission for Kava. You don't even have to ask permission from Binance to use BEP3 to relay your assets across. It's live all the time. We sort of work really hard to make sure that it is both live and safe all the time. But it is not decentralized, and sort of there's no way you could claim that it is. And so moving from these permissionless liquidity pools, really exciting, I think, even without decentralization, to a greater level of decentralization, sort of permissionless, decentralized, eventually censorship resistant. I think that will take some time to emerge, sort of these asset pools that are truly decentralized, just sort of sitting out there on chain, very liquid, very available.
Yeah, it's a lot of those problems that you mentioned are issues with a lot of these bridges. And, one of the bridges that a lot of folks on this call who are watching this might have used is the WBTC bridge. And the WBTC bridge works exactly like this.
Yep.
And most bridges out there do too. And the permissionless bridges that we've seen in TBTC, I think on Ethereum, which is a huge system there, there's extremely high capital requirements for using that. And the reason is they don't use validator set security and a few other things, but we've seen limited adoption of TBTC for those reasons. And I think what Kevin's kind of alluding to is that the first generation of these cross-chain technologies has sort of been out. The industry's learned a lot of lessons from those. And what we're seeing now is the emergence of IBC and this sort of next generation of cross-chain assets that we'll see. Just a reminder, anyone watching, if you've got questions for Kevin or for me, we'll take questions towards the end of the chat. So please drop them in the chat.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, that one of the things that we found that we could not compromise on if we wanted to have users and operators sort of aligned was that capital efficiency. That having a really high collateral bond ratio for your relayer or for your pegged asset is really not attractive to both the providers of the collateral and the users. And that the friction there for something like TBTC has, in our opinion, just been too high, right? That the need to back something with 150% collateral is probably not possible along a large liquidity pool. That if you want to get into the hundreds of millions, want to get into the billions of dollars, there's just no examples of finance where you see collateralization ratios like that. And so moving towards validator set security is sort of the next step in decentralization, where you have accountability, but you might not have the same degree of collateralization, and like the slashing rules are a little bit different. But that to us is a compromise that can work. Whereas, we're all going to put down 200% collateral is very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to see a system like Maker and Kava itself, the CDP system that we've seen, get as much adoption as it has with that limitation. I think has been incredibly impressive for me and surprising for a lot of industry analysts who I think expected much less adoption from those products. It's also, I think, a testament to the massive amount of underutilized capital within the crypto space and the huge potential for DeFi. I mean, you guys are starting to see capital inflows during this bull market and starting to see the type of adoption that, mass adoption brings. And
word travels. It's very interesting. Like, you do see these capital flows come in, you're like, that's not us. Like that there are, people legitimately using these things. A lot of these DeFi protocols that, the teams know nothing about. They're like, we just deployed it and there's $100 million in here. And I really, it's not always inside baseball. You're just like, there are people who are very interested in these protocols, and there are people who will use them to, degrees that surprise even me as a developer and someone who's super bullish on this technology.
Without even telling you to, or asking any questions, which is
exactly
scary sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, well, they aped in.
It's I always find that you get more questions from folks putting in a couple $100 than folks putting in a couple million, which is still kind of puzzling to me and wild, but that is crypto.
Yeah, very crypto.
So a huge release that you guys had released recently was the hard money market. You sort of alluded to it, which is very similar to Compound. Do you guys have any features coming up for hard soon, or are you focused on the AMM and these other things?
We are preparing release. I'm not quite ready to commit to a date, although internally we're getting closer to committing to a date. So we're preparing release for the borrow side functionality, which is a major upgrade. We'll probably roll it out as we have with these other protocols in stages with sort of lower limits. So you'll be able to supply all you want, but the borrow limits will probably start low, and then we'll ratchet them up as we go via governance. We've had good success with both releasing things, getting used, but then finding bugs that way. And we're targeting Q1 2021 to have that functionality ready. We're sort of just ending the phase of protocol development, getting ready for test nets, getting ready for sort of the full release cycle that involves both the community and Kava developers and Kava users. And then obviously, the current chain custodies hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're also making damn sure that the migration is in place and smooth for that. And then along with that, they'll get another number of efficiency improvements. We've sort of found all the areas that are obviously slow and decrepit on the chain and upgraded them to better mechanisms. And so we'll get a nice performance
a couple of nice performance fixes lately. Thank you guys, by the way.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that as a validator. I've been able to run some slightly smaller machines lately.
Yeah,
which
exactly. The machines are getting beefy out there.
A couple notes out of what you just said there. As an SDK developer, writing migrations has always been my least favorite thing and the most nerve-wracking.
Scary.
You know, it's pretty wild when you're writing something to like change fields on hundreds of millions of dollars worth of state. And, you know, even though you know it works properly and you've overly tested it, doing it is always
doing it live feels like that. Those early upgrades I will never forget. Like now I'm a bit seasoned and sort of just like the upgrade's over and I don't feel as much relief, but those early upgrades were just like it's never going to work. How could it possibly work?
Oh yeah. I mean all of those have been moments for me where I'm like, yep, I'm working in a startup and this feels crazy. But yeah, with the upgrade module coming, and you know, we made a lot of improvements to that process. So like combined with experience, it's also a little less hair raising. Another thing that you mentioned that you know, I see Ethereum and the Wi-Fi community and all of these other communities sort of coming late to the party on is governance. You know, over here in Cosmos, we shipped with governance and we've been using it pretty extensively throughout the ecosystem for a long time to signal upgrades, to you know, get consensus from folks on contentious protocol decisions,
change parameters. We're
been a DAO.
Yeah, lively doing that. Yeah,
you guys have changed a few parameters. What were the parameters you changed most recently?
So we control the rollout of our protocols using parameter changes. For example, we'll launch with a debt limit of, I assume it was quite low. I don't remember the exact number, probably 2 million USDX or something like that. People come in, we sort of analyze the system asynchronously, are like, okay, is everything good here? It is. We upgrade the system live on chain with no downtime using these parameter changes. And then, so the other sort of thing that I've been really pleased at how easy it is to do on Cosmos is we've created what ETH would call like multi-sig governance via committees, where you delegate only certain parameters to a subset of individuals. And so we can, for example, BEP3 has asset limits. We can raise those without a full governance vote that's delegated to 6 key holders, and 4 need to vote to do it. But they don't, those keys only control the right to raise the BEP3 limits. You can't move assets around with them. You can't enact big governance proposals. And I think sort of scoping governance is a big challenge in Ethereum. That for us, that was a couple weeks sprint. And we're like, okay, we can do this in a generic manner now. And sort of it's quite a powerful primitive. And I hope that sort of as people start to experiment with it, they're like, oh, this is actually really good tech. And sort of, yeah.
It's one of the things that I've been most impressed about in the Cosmos ecosystem. And, funny enough, as the PM on the SDK, I was not excited about this feature when we were shipping it. I was like, oh, can we get this governance thing out? People can just vote on proposals. Like, I didn't understand the power of it and how kind of ahead of the curve we were. Because you see folks, entire projects working on this DAO functionality, and Cosmos has made it easy enough for every project to implement custom governance functionality. And, having multi-sig committees that you either delegate funds to via the community pool, which is something that the Cosmos Hub just did, or, this Kava style where you're doing individual parameters for particular pieces of the system. Like these types of functionalities are the types of DAO functionalities that, you would expect if you're running a company.
That's good governance. Yeah, like all that is like, if you look at how corporations run, that's how you parameterize and operationalize good corporate governance on chain in a transparent manner. And it's very, very powerful primitive. I'm excited to see what people do in general with it, as well as like everybody's a DAO now. It's cool. Yeah. Like being a DAO is great.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have like full corporate governance that you would expect out of like an S&P 500 corporation that comes out of the box with the SDK, which is just always kind of mind-blowing for me. Okay, Kevin, so we're coming up on the last 5 minutes here. I don't see any questions today, so I'm going to ask a few other ones. One thing that I saw with Kava recently, there's been some issues with USDX stability. I saw you guys rolled out some parameter changes to deal with that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that issue and the steps that you guys have taken to correct that?
Yeah, so we definitely take the approach that like we're trying to create long-term incentives that USDX will maintain some stability around a peg without guaranteeing, you know, something that we really can't guarantee in the market. And so recently with what we've discovered, at least with yield farming and the type of rewards that the Kava blockchain has implemented, basically inflationary rewards to liquidity providers, is depending on where you put the rewards in the stream, you can create a lot of downward price pressure on something that you don't want. So in this case, we're seeing user behaviors where essentially we're like incentivizing you to go leverage short against USDX, and paying you to do so, and people will take you up on that. So we've tuned that down after realizing that, like, yeah, that's not a great spot to be incentivizing the behavior. And then we think that there's two things. There's off-chain, there's working with basically external partners who want to make markets, who want to be involved in the system, and sort of similar to DAI, how that has basically taken on its own community of market makers, arbitrageurs. We work off-chain to try and find people who are interested in doing that. Obviously, when liquidity is low and the protocol is new, it's a little bit harder. And then on-chain, we think that there's actually a number of mechanisms, including the automated market maker, including hard money maker, that sort of incentivize behaviors that lead to stability of the USDX protocol, or at least not rapid instability via bad incentives. And so rolling out hard money market, rolling out the AMM, targeting LP incentives in a way that's aligned with USDX being used in a way that comports with stability, as well as that gives some of the markets that are made with USDX some on-chain depth and liquidity, really powerful. And so we think that sort of that vision should alleviate some of the short-term pressures, and then long-term, it's all about sort of adoption, getting external partners invested into the ecosystem. Yeah.
What collateral forms can you use with USDX right now?
BTC, BNB, XRP, Kava, Hard, and BUSD. And it was BUSD that was the problematic one, where and this is similar to using USDC in Maker. You know, you basically have a very in crypto terms, a collateral efficient way of wrapping a stable coin into another stable coin, because the collateralization ratio is quite low and the liquidation ratio is quite liquidation probability. Like the odds that you get liquidated with BUSD are 0 in Kava because it has a set price of 1. And so if you can risk-free wrap your BUSD into something, get paid to do so, what you're going to tend to do is sell it to get more. And so that was not a great spot in the system to incentivize. And so we have turned those down. And so the functionality, the reason you want the wrapper is so that you can have a capital efficient way of doing liquidations in the event of big downturns. That's basically why these systems can survive large downturns. But you don't want to incentivize too much of USDX creation with a stable coin, because A, it creates a centralized collateral point, and B, it definitely incentivizes this instability. Yeah.
That's, you know, these systems are very complicated, and
lessons learned.
Yeah, the experiences that you guys have really helped you kind of improve the system, which is, you know, that's kind of the ethos of the Cosmos: ship and iterate, and kind of keep making it better, and we'll get there. Sisla asks, hey guys, I have a question. I have Kava Hard. Are you planning to implement variable incentives for staking? Can we expect NFTs in return for network participation in the future? I think he's kind of talking about liquidity mining rewards with Kava and Hard. And I did hear you guys had some plans around that, right?
Yeah, so we currently have liquidity mining rewards. I think this might be for staking, which is interesting, because I talked about this a bit yesterday on with you on Twitter, which I think is talking about variable length staking. And I think that's actually very interesting and is on our roadmap. And is on our roadmap, the idea that you can commit to staking for X period of time at X reward, and you can then, you know, stake for a month, stake for a year at variable rates. But we also then do have on-chain liquidity provider incentives today. So you can supply Kava to Hard and earn liquidity incentives, or you can create USDX with Kava or Hard and earn on-chain incentives, similar to how a lot of the yield farming works on Ethereum, with a few sort of differences. One being like all the rewards are time locked. So you claim your rewards, you can claim them a month from now, you can claim them a year from now, and you get a different rate. So we do have like some time dynamics that we've seen with sort of variable rewards and variable time lags on rewards.
What you say about that, it really brings up something that is kind of a theme for me over this last month. There's a number of improvements to staking that most protocols want to make this year. You mentioned staking rewards earlier, and cross-chain staking is another thing throughout the ecosystem that we haven't talked about on this call, but is more crucial for other chains. This variable and bonding periods and other improvements to that staking module. It sounds like there's a working group forming to do a major refactor of the staking module to support these use cases. And this is going to be a major refactor that the ecosystem is going to kind of go through in the first half of this year to support features in the second half. So, hopefully Kava, we can get you guys involved in that, and I can connect you with the right folks there. One last question before we wrap up, but it is the one that I'm asking everyone. When IBC?
For Kava?
Yeah.
Q2 or Q3.
Q2 or Q3.
Yeah, we have 10 modules to upgrade from 39 to 40. I would estimate off the top of my head 100 types to port over to protobufs, as well as I said, these migrations, very important. Don't want to mess them up. So I don't think we'll ship in Q1. I imagine we're going to start full steam ahead. I've already done some prototyping, and you've also helped me with that. We have good support, but I think Q2 or Q3, we're going to go live with version 40 and sort of get into the interchain as fast as possible.
I'm really looking forward to locking up my Akash over on Kava and using USDX over on Akash to pay for compute. So
absolutely,
that's going to be exciting. Q2, Q3. Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll check in again soon and talk soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jack. Thank you.
All right.